All right, everybody, welcome back for another deep dive.
Yeah, it's exciting to be back.
Absolutely. And this one in particular is going to be super interesting because, you know, we put up the call to the audience for topics and ideas that they wanted us to dig into. And this was one that came up a bunch.
It's a popular one for sure.
Yeah, and it makes sense, right?
Yeah.
Because I think everybody is looking for ways to, boost their income and create a little bit more financial stability.
Yeah, especially these days.
Exactly. And the specific episode that people kept mentioning was called Profit Power, Diversifying Your Revenue Streams.
Mhm.
And what to say, I listened to that one myself, and it was jam-packed with good stuff. So
Oh, yeah. Definitely a lot to unpack
that's
there.
for sure. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to break it down. We're going to pull out some of those key takeaways and really see how we can apply them to, maybe your business or just, your personal finances.
Sounds good to me.
So I guess the first thing, that we got to address is like, why diversify at all, right? I mean, it seems like a lot of work.
All right. Well, the podcast makes a really good point about that. I mean,
Yeah.
they talk about how relying on a single income source, it's kind of like sitting on a one-legged stool.
Okay. Yeah, I can see that that's not very stable.
Not at all.
Yeah.
One little wobble and you're going down. And it's the same thing with your finances. If you're only relying on one source of income and something happens to that source.
You're in trouble.
Exactly. And, we've seen that happen a lot lately with, unexpected job losses or industries taking a hit. So having those multiple revenue streams, it's like having, that stool with multiple legs. It gives you that stability and that peace of mind.
Okay. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. So I guess the question then becomes, how do we go about diversifying our income? And the podcast actually lays out three main strategies.
Yeah, and they're all really practical too.
Okay, so let's dive into those. What's the first one?
The first one they talk about is adding new products or services to your existing business. And they use this really great example of a coffee shop.
Okay, love coffee shops.
Right, me too. Well, imagine that coffee shop. They're already selling coffee, right? But what if they also started selling, branded merchandise like mugs or t-shirts?
Oh, yeah, that's smart. They're already a brand. People love their coffee.
Exactly. And people love showing their loyalty to brands they love, right? So they could totally capitalize on that. Or, what if they even offered like barista classes, teach people how to make those fancy lattes and cappuccinos?
Ooh, yeah, that's a good one. And they're already experts in that. So it's not like they have to go and, develop a whole new skill set.
Exactly. They're leveraging their existing knowledge and their space and their equipment.
And they're probably already training their own staff anyway, so why not open it up to the public?
Right. It's like a natural extension of what they're already doing.
Okay, so that's adding new products and services. What's the next strategy?
The next one is exploring new markets. And this is where things can get really interesting.
Okay, yeah, because, I mean, if you're thinking about like taking your business global, I mean, that's a whole other...
It can be a huge undertaking for sure, but it also has the potential for massive rewards.
Okay, so like what kind of businesses would this be a good fit for?
Well, they give the example of an online store. And, these days with e-commerce, it's easier than ever to reach customers all over the world.
Okay, that's true. But I'm thinking like language barriers, different currencies, shipping logistics. I mean, isn't that a nightmare?
It can be, but the podcast talks about some ways to navigate those challenges. Things like partnering with local businesses in your target market, or maybe even adapting your products to fit the cultural preferences of that market.
Oh, that's interesting. So like really doing your research,
Yeah.
understanding the nuances of that new market.
Exactly. And they also emphasize the importance of, researching the legal and logistical challenges, making sure you're complying with all the regulations and stuff.
Okay, so calculated risks, not just jumping in blindly.
Precisely.
Gotcha. Okay, so that's exploring new markets. What about the third strategy?
All right, the third strategy is all about monetizing existing assets. And this one, I think, really gets the creative juices flowing.
Okay, tell me more.
So they give this really cool example of a gym. Most gyms, they're busy in the mornings and evenings, right?
Yeah, when everybody's going before work or after work.
Right. But during the day, those spaces are often just sitting there empty.
That's true.
So what if they rented out that space during those off-peak hours, for things like yoga classes or dance workshops or even like photography shoots?
Oh, wow. That's actually brilliant.
Yeah.
You're making money off of a resource that would otherwise just be sitting idle.
Exactly. And that's what they call rental income diversification. And there are so many possibilities there.
Okay. Yeah, like I'm thinking like a photographer renting out their studio space when they're not using it, or a musician renting out their recording studio.
Exactly. Or, a software company, they could offer premium features for their software, or they could even create like an online course based on their expertise.
Oh, yeah, digital products. That's a big one these days.
It is. And the beauty of it is you're not really creating anything new. You're just finding new ways to monetize what you already have.
Okay, so we've got adding new products or services, exploring new markets, and monetizing existing assets. That's three really solid strategies.
And when you combine those strategies, you're not just increasing your income, you're also reducing your risk.
Right, because if one stream dries up, you've got others to fall back on.
Exactly. And that's what gives you that financial stability that we were talking about earlier.
And I think that's what's so appealing about diversification.
Yeah.
It's not just about making more money. It's about creating that safety net.
Absolutely.
So the podcast actually shared this really inspiring story about a bakery that was really struggling during a downturn.
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, and instead of just giving up, they decided to get creative with the revenue streams. And they started doing things like selling baking kits online and offering virtual baking classes.
And it totally saved their business.
Yeah, they went from barely scraping by to actually thriving.
Yeah.
And it's all because they were willing to adapt and to think outside the box.
It's a great example of how diversification can not only help you survive tough times, but actually help you grow and come out even stronger on the other side.
Absolutely. Okay, so we've talked about the why and the how of diversification, but let's get down to brass tacks here. What are some practical tips that people can use to actually get started?
Well, the podcast emphasizes the importance of starting with a self-assessment, really
Yeah.
taking stock of your strengths, your resources, your skills.
Okay, so like inventory your superpower.
Exactly. What are you good at? What do you enjoy doing? What resources do you have access to?
Okay, so once you've got that list, then what?
Then it's time to start looking for opportunities.
Hmm.
What are the gaps in the market? What are people looking for that they're not finding?
So like unmet needs, basically.
Exactly. And this is where you can really get creative.
Yeah.
Think about your own experiences, your own frustrations. Are there any problems that you've encountered that you wish there was a solution for?
That's a great point, because sometimes the best business ideas come from solving your own problems.
Absolutely. And, once you've identified a potential opportunity, the podcast stresses the importance of starting small.
Okay, so don't go all in right away.
Right. Test the waters first.
Right.
Maybe launch a small pilot program or offer a limited edition product, see what kind of response you get.
Makes sense. And if it's a flop, you haven't invested a ton of time and money?
Exactly. And then based on that feedback, you can refine your offering and make adjustments as needed.
So it's all about that continuous improvement.
It is. And that ties into their final tip, which is to monitor and adapt. Keep track of your results, see what's working, what's not working, and be willing to pivot if necessary.
Yeah, because what works today might not work tomorrow.
Exactly. The market is constantly changing, so you got to stay flexible and be willing to adjust your strategies along the way.
So as we wrap up here, I think it's safe to say that diversifying your revenue streams, it's not just about making more money, it's about creating value. It's about building resilience. And it's about ultimately achieving that financial security that we all crave.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Awesome. So I think to leave our listeners with something to really tutor on, what's one asset or skill that you have that you could potentially monetize in a new way?
Yeah, take some time to really brainstorm this. I mean, you might be surprised at what you come up with.
Totally. And who knows, that next big idea might be right around the corner.
You never know.
All right. Well, thanks for diving in with us today, everybody. And until next time, keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those revenue streams flowing.
See ya. Bye.